You are on mute. Let me unmute. Namru Prabhu, make him co-host. Mukunda Datta Prabhu, I left. Maybe he'll rejoin. Once he joins, make him the co-host. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Prabhu, are you able to hear? Mukunda Datta Prabhu? You are on mute, Prabhu. Oops. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Mukunda Datta Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Mukunda Datta Prabhu, you're able to hear us? I cannot unmute. Okay, let me see. Hold on. Namru Prabhu, you are there. Make him the co-host, please. I'm not able to do. Mukunda Datta Prabhu.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
But I cannot start the video. Okay, there we go. Now you can see me too.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Sorry, had a little trouble joining.
Hare
Krishna.
Thank you.
So,
go ahead.
Let us begin, as always, with auspiciousness, Mangalacharana. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Tonight we will read from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder and Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And I've selected chapter 18 of the Anchalila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. This chapter is entitled Rescuing the Lord from the Sea. The context is a discussion of all Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's manifestations of ecstasy while he was in the latter part of his lifetime in Jagannath Puri performing his Anchalila. So we'll read from that. A summary of the 18th chapter is given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Let me just first of all offer respectful obeisances unto all the spiritual masters in descendant succession and to all the devotees of the Lord. Om Jnana Timanantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lavita Shri Vishakhan Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Ananda Leelamaya Vigrahaya Hema Bhadivyachhavi Sundaraya Tasmai Mahaprema Rasa Pradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Madgavirapi Gopala Srikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadeva Sambhayah Pitva Rishye Yustat Priyajanaha. According to Srila Prabhupada's commentary, he gives a summary of the 18th chapter was given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya. On an autumn evening, when the moon was full, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu walked along the seashore near Aitoda temple. Mistaking the sea for the Yamuna River, he jumped into it, hoping to see the water pastimes of Krishna. The water pastimes Krishna enjoyed with Srimati Radharani and the other gopis. As he floated in the sea, however, he was washed away to the Konarka temple, where a fisherman, thinking that the Lord's body was a big fish, caught him in his net and brought him ashore. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was unconscious, and his body had become unusually transformed. As soon as the fisherman touched the Lord's body, he became mad in ecstatic love of Krishna. His own madness frightened him, however, because he thought that he was being haunted by a ghost. As he was about to seek a ghost charmer, he met Sarup Damodar Goswami and the other devotees on the beach, who had been looking everywhere for the Lord. After some inquiries, Sarup Damodar could understand that the fisherman had caught Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his net. Since the fisherman was afraid of being haunted by a ghost, Sarup Damodar gave him a slap and chanted Hare Krishna, which immediately pacified him. Thereafter, when the devotees chanted the Hare Krishna Mahamantra loudly, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to his external consciousness. Then they brought him back to his own residence. Text 1. Sarajyotsna Sindhor Avakalana Yajata Yamuna Pramadhavan Yosmin Harivirahata Parnava Iva Nimagnoham Murchalapayasi Nivasan Ratri Makilam Prabhate Prapta Svairavatu Sashachin Sunirihanaha. That means, in the brilliant autumn moonlight, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mistook the sea for the river Yamuna. Greatly afflicted by separation from Krishna, he ran and dove into the sea and remained unconscious in the water the entire night. In the morning, he was found by his personal devotees. May that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the son of Mother Shachi, protect us by his transcendental pastimes. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Nityananda Prabhu. All glories to Advaita Acharya. And all glories to all the devotees of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Emate Mahaprabhu Nila Chale Vaishe Ratri Dine Krishna Vichhedarna Vebhase. While thus living at Jagannath Puri, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu floated all day and night in an ocean of separation from Krishna. Sharat Kale Ratri Shabad Chandrika Ujjal Prabhu Nija Gana Laya Vedana Ratri Shakal. During a night of the autumn season, when a full moon brightened everything, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wandered all night long with his devotees. He wandered. Udyane bhamen kautuga dekhite rashlilar gita shloka padite shunite He walked from garden to garden, seeing the pastimes of Lord Krishna and hearing and reciting songs and verses concerning the Ras Leela. Can you imagine the feelings of these devotees who were accompanying Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at this time? They're walking along the beach, just like some 50 years ago, we walked along the beach with Srila Prabhupada. But for us, it was Venice Beach or Juhu Beach. But who knows what Srila Prabhupada was feeling? Something like that. These devotees must have been experiencing with Srila Prabhupada, at least some of them. Of course, most of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's intimate associates were actually his intimate associates even in the spiritual world, Golok Vrindavan. So they knew exactly what was going on. After all, they were none other than, Sarup Damodar Goswami and others, most intimate associates, even in Radha Krishna's Leelas. But this is the scene that we see here. On the Sharat Purnima, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was walking apparently along the beach in Jagannath Puri, but in his mind, he was walking along Yamuna Tatpara, and his devotees were all following after him. And as Lord Chaitanya's ecstasy manifested a particular Leela, devotees such as Sarup Damodar and others would try to enliven the Lord or try to assuage his separation by chanting appropriate Gitas and Shlokas, etc. And in this way, the devotees wandered the whole night. Prabhu prema veshe karen gana nartan, Prabhu bhava veshe rasha lilan karan. Just see, he sang and danced in ecstatic love and sometimes imitated the rasa dance in emotional ecstasy. Kabhu bhavon made prabhu iti utidhai, bhumi pade, kabhu murcha, kabhu gadi jai. He sometimes ran here and there in the madness of ecstasy, and sometimes fell and rolled on the ground. Sometimes he became completely unconscious. Rashalila re kushloka jabe pade shune, purvavata tabe artha pade napone. When he heard Sarup Damodar recite a verse concerning the Ras Leela, or he himself recited one, he would personally explain it, as he had previously done. Just imagine if we were so fortunate to hear these explanations from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mouth. The associates that we're hearing about here in Chaitanya Charitamrita, they had such good fortune. Ei matarash lilai hai jata shlok, shavararth kare pai kabhu harsha shok. In this way, he explained the meaning of all the verses concerning Ras Leela. Sometimes he would be very sad, and sometimes very happy. Sheishab shloker artha, sheishab vikar, sheishab varnite grantha hayati vishtar. To explain fully all those verses and all the transformations that took place in the Lord's body would require a very large volume. Here we are on the 10th verse, 10th couplet of this chapter. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is already, in effect, apologizing for his brevity here. How many places throughout the Chaitanya Charitamrita does he speak like this? In many, many places, in his very condensed version, just summarizing the gist of the Lord's Leelas in this world, he has to tell us, frankly, that he has really been sankshipta here, very, very brief and condensed. But there were so many transformations, there were so many discussions, there were so many verses recited, it would require a very large volume, he says. Sheshab Barnete Grantha Ativistar. He's concerned. Why? Because when he's writing this, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is maybe 80 or 90 years old. It's not easy to do anything when you're at that age. And his concern is to somehow finish this great work of Chaitanya Charitamrita, classic work. definitive work, we can say, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life and his teachings. Why did Srila Prabhupada translate this book? He could have translated so many other books about Lord Chaitanya that exist. That's something to think about. But Srila Prabhupada chose to also translate this Chaitanya Charitamrita. In his own life, Srila Prabhupada also was very concerned to get this project done. We know the story. On the Juhu beach, speaking of beaches, or maybe it was Venice Beach, must have been Venice Beach in Los Angeles. He was asking the devotees, how long does it take to produce one volume? And they said about a month. And then he said, how long will it take to produce? I want you to produce 17 volumes in 2 months. Impossible instruction. But when the devotees pointed that out to Srila Prabhupada, he said impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. Why was Srila Prabhupada so concerned to get this work, 17 volumes of Bengali translations and purports? Why was he so concerned to get it done so quickly? Because he didn't know also. Just like actually, if you think about it, none of us knows, especially in 2022. Nobody can really guarantee that we're not going to be vaporized in a big flash of negative ionization. It can happen in this age of hypersonic missiles and in this age of hot war, not even a Cold War anymore. Some people are saying World War III. So anyway, in this way, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was anxious to finish the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and how fortunate are we that he did. But we have to pay for it in the brevity of his descriptions. At some later point, maybe some self-realized soul can elaborate all these things, or when we become qualified, we can go back to Godhead to really hear all the discussions that took place that night, and hear all the verses that were quoted and all the significance that was attached to each and every line of each and every song that Mahaprabhu and his associates were singing. Vladashavatsare Jai Jai Lila Khane Khane Atibahu Yabhai Grantha Nakainu Khane. So as to not increase the size of this book, I have not written about all the Lord's pastimes, for he performed them every moment of every day for 12 years. And this is just the Antya-lila, this section here. Antya-lila is especially dealing with the Lord's later pastimes after his acceptance of the sannyas order. And after touring South India, he returned and stayed mainly in Jagannath Puri, but in Jagannath Puri, he was relishing these ecstasies day and night, especially in the company of his most intimate associates, with whom he could actually discuss these things. In public, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not discuss these things so much. What was his program in public? Srila Prabhupada says again and again, his program in public was Harinama Sankirtana and Prasadam distribution. This was also Srila Prabhupada's main program. But he wanted his books distributed also, because Srila Prabhupada has written all these books, even this book, even this chapter, dealing with such esoteric pastimes, elevated activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the way that Srila Prabhupada wrote his books is such that anyone from any walk of life at any stage of advancement can immediately plug in and begin to taste and begin to realize what's going on with this Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada often said about his books, they're like sugar. Wherever you begin tasting, anywhere, any page, any book, you will taste the same sweetness. That's the great accomplishment that Srila Prabhupada performed in his own pastimes amongst us while we watched. Srila Prabhupada wrote all these books in less than a decade, and 60 volumes, and very carefully explained. Everything very carefully explained, that even a fool can understand it. Otherwise, how have we understood anything? Purve jay dekhanachi digdarashan taichi jani ho bikara pralap varnan. As I've previously indicated, I am describing the mad speeches and bodily transformations of the Lord only in brief. Sahasrabadane jabe kahayananta ekadiner lilartabu nahi payanta. If Ananta with his 1,000 hoods tried to describe even one day's pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would find them impossible to describe fully. Koti juga parjanto jadi likhai Ganesh ek diner vilartabhu nahi pai shesh. If Ganesh, Lord Shiva's son and the expert scribe of the demigods, tried for millions of millenniums to fully describe one day of the Lord's pastimes, he would be unable to find their limit. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Bhaktir prem vikara dekhi Krishner chamatkar. Exclamation mark is here in the Bengali. Krishna jara na payanta kebacharar. Even Lord Krishna is struck with wonder at seeing the transformations of ecstasy in his devotees. If Krishna himself cannot estimate the limits of such emotions, how could others? This is described because we're on the topic of Radha Krishna Lila, and particularly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Radha Krishna themselves, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. Krishna comes in the color and assuming the sentiment of Srimati Radharani, because this is one thing that he cannot understand. This is what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is only hinting at here in this verse. Chamatkar, Krishna Chamatkar. Krishna feels wonder looking at the prem of his devotees, particularly Srimati Radharani and her friends. Why? Can the sun feel the warmth and the light of its own rays? Can a flower detect the fragrance, its own fragrance? So in the same way, God, Krishna, he cannot understand the love that his best devotees, particularly his Vladini Shakti herself, Srimati Radharani, feels for him. He cannot detect that, but he wants to taste that. For this reason, they fuse together. Ekatmano abhibhumipura deha bhedam tatao tao chaitanyakyam prakanamanthuna yadvayam chaikyam aptam radha bhava jyuti suvilatam naumi krishna sarupam. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikrita Vladni Shakti Resmat. The eternal pastimes of Radha and Krishna, they're going on forever. They're one in their identity, but they've separated themselves only for the purpose of exchanging rasa svadanam, and bewildering the world. Rupa Goswami says, describing Krishna, actually he's glorifying Yashoda, Virchita Jagat Pramodam. She has put together, somehow or other, she has produced this boy, Krishna, who is capable of affecting universal joy, Jagat Pramoda. So similarly, about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the same Krishna, but he bewilders the universe with the revelation of the depth and wonder of Radha Krishna Lila. This Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally displayed, especially in his later years and amongst his intimate associates here in Puri, as we're hearing in this chapter. So this is being hinted here. Even Krishna is struck with wonder at seeing the transformation of ecstasy in his devotees. If Krishna himself cannot estimate the limits of such emotions, how can we? Well, the answer is this. We can experience, we can estimate something of this love by divine grace only. And what form does that divine grace take? His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who has written these books for us in the dead of night while the entire universe was asleep. Srila Prabhupada was taking dictation directly from Swayam Bhagavat, just to say the right words so that we could understand anything of Krishna consciousness, only by his grace. Otherwise, it's virtually impossible. So, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami continues, Bhakta Premar Jata Dasha Jegati Prakar Jata Dukha Jata Shukha Yatek Vivar Krishnata Hasham Yap Napare Janite Bhakta Bhava Angikare Taha Shadite. Krishna himself cannot fully understand the conditions, the mode of progress, the happiness and unhappiness, and the moods of ecstatic love of his devotees. He therefore accepts the role of a devotee to taste these emotions fully. These are all the things. There's a list here. What are they? Bhakta Premar Jata Dasha, Gati Prakar, Dukha Sukha Vikar, ityadi. All these things. So ecstatic love, Krishnere na chai prema bhaktere na chai, apane na chai tine na che kathai. Ecstatic love of Krishna makes Krishna and his devotees dance. And it also dances personally. In this way, all three dance together in one place on the beach at Jagannath Puri. Ecstatic love of Krishna is dancing. Krishna himself is dancing. And the devotees are all dancing. What a beautiful description. Prema rabikara bornite chahe jai jan, chanda tharite chahe jena haya vaman. One who wants to describe the transformations of ecstatic love of Krishna is like a dwarf trying to catch the moon in the sky. In other words, it's impossible. But as Rupa Goswami writes in one of his songs, which he actually credits to his older brother, Sanatana, Ayam avilola tayadya Sanatana. He describes the mercy of Krishna, and he says, Durghata Kartana Vithatri. The mercy of Krishna is such a thing that it makes impossible things happen. The mercy of Krishna makes impossible things happen. Impossible things become possible by Krishna's divine grace. And even though we're dwarfs, we can try to reach the moon. As it's the famous shloka is there, we many times hear, Mukam Goroti Vachanam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. If you're a deaf mute, you can recite eloquent poetry. If you're lame, you can hop over mountains. If you're blind, you can count the stars in the sky at night by the divine grace of Krishna, especially in the form of the spiritual master. Vayu jaiche sindhu jaler hare kakan, Krishna prema karna itaiche jivera sparshan. As the wind can carry away but a drop of water in the ocean, a living entity can touch only a particle of the ocean of love of Krishna. Another nice poetic description here. At 90 years of age, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who was very deeply trained in poetry, by the way, he was a master of Kavya. And so therefore he can say something like this. You can you can almost feel the spray of the ocean on your face as you're hearing this beautiful description, because we're talking about the ocean at Jagannath Puri. The wind can carry away just a drop of water out of that ocean. And similarly, any one of us can only touch such a drop out of the ocean of love of Krishna. So who can imagine the entire thing. What to speak of describe it fully? We've already heard. Ananta Shesh himself cannot describe even one day of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes fully, cannot give the whole significance of everything. It's not possible. It does not fit. It's like trying to fit an elephant onto a plate. All it will do is break your plate. Kane kane utte premar taranga ananta jiva chara kaha tara paibe ka anta. Endless waves arise moment after moment in that ocean of love. How could an insignificant living entity estimate their limits? Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaha Karena Swadan Shaveka Jane Taha Sharupadigan. Only a person on the level of Sarup Damodar Goswami can fully know what Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tastes in his love for Krishna. Jiva hanya kare jai tahar varana apana shodhite tara chare ekakan. When an ordinary living entity describes the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he purifies himself by touching one drop of that great ocean. Emata rashe shloka shakalai padila. Sheshe jalakeli shloka parite lagila. Thus, all the verses about the Ras Leela dance were recited. Then finally, the verse concerning the pastimes in the water was recited. And what verse was that? That is the next. He says, Tabir yuta shamamapo hitamanga sangha Krishtasraja sakucha kungamaranjitaya Gandharva pali bhiranudruta abhishadva Shvanto gaji biribharat Iva bhinna setuha. As an independent leader among elephants enters the water with its female elephants, Krishna, who is transcendental to the Vedic principles of morality, entered the water of the Yamuna with the gopis. His chest had brushed against their breasts, brushing his flower garland and coloring it with red kumkum powder. Attracted by the fragrance of that garland, humming bumblebees followed Krishna like celestial beings of Gandharva Loka. In this way, Lord Krishna mitigated the fatigue of the rasa dance. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 33, text number 22. It's on the basis of verses like this one that Rupa Goswami, in his final stanza in the glorification of Yamuna Nadi, says, Chidvilasavari pura bhura bhuvaswarapini, kirtitapi durma dodu papa marma tapini, ballavendra nandanangaraga bhanga ganthini, mam punatu sarvadara vinda bandhanamini. He's praying that this daughter of the sun, who is the daughter of the sun, Yamuna Devi, daughter of the sun and brother of Yamaraj, he's praying that she will purify us as we take our baths every day, hopefully, in the Yamuna River. And how does she do that? Chid vilasa vari pura pura swarapini. Her spiritual water is flowing throughout all three planetary systems. Kirtitapi durma dodu papam marmatapini. And it's well known that these waters have the potency to completely dry up any trace of even the most deep-rooted sins. Ballavendra nandanangaraga bhanga ganthi. And these waters are scented by the fragrance of the limbs of Lord Krishna as he's bathing in the Yamuna, in the course of pastimes such as those that we're hearing in this 10th canto verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Mam Punato Sarvadara Vindabandhu. Please purify me, O Yamuna Devi. Praise. Rupa Swami prays like this. Ei Mata Mahaprabhu Bhamite Bhamite Aitota Haite Samudra Dekhena Chambite. While thus wandering near the temple of Aitota, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu suddenly saw the sea. Chandrakanti Uchalita Taranga Ujjal Jhalamala Kare Jena Jamunar Jal. Brightened by the shining light of the moon, the high waves of the sea glittered like the waters of the river Yamuna. You can see it in your mind if you're listening. Yamunar Bhame Prabhu Dhanya Chalila Alakhite Jai Shindu Jale Jhampadila. Mistaking the sea for the Yamuna, the Lord ran swiftly and jumped into the water, unseen by the others. Horite haila murcha kichui na jane, kabhu dubai, kabhu bhashai tarangera gane. Falling into the sea, he lost consciousness and could not understand where he was. Sometimes he sank beneath the waves, and sometimes he floated above them. Tarange vahia phire, jena shushka kashta, ke bujite pare, chaitanya nata. The waves carried him here and there like a piece of dry wood. Who can understand this dramatic performance by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? You have to remember, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he comes to this world, the last thing that you would expect the Supreme Personality of Godhead to do was to jump into the ocean in the middle of the night, to fall unconscious, and to be carried about in a daze all night long. And yet this is what he did. The Supreme Lord. Why? We've already discussed. Radha Bhava Judisolatam Naumi Krishna Sarupam. Because he has assumed the madness, the sentiment and the complexion of Srimati Radharani. Sentiment so strong that it's really comparable only to madness. And in fact, in this very passage, it is compared to madness. Divyon Mada is the word used for it. Transcendental madness. I think that's the next chapter. So, Konar Kera Dike, Prabhure Tarange Laya Jai, Kabhu Dubaya Rakhe, Kabhu Pashai Alaya Jai. Keeping the Lord sometimes submerged and sometimes afloat, the waves carried him toward the Konarka temple. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Finally, we get purport. Konarka, also generally known as Ardaka Tirtha, is a temple of Lord Surya, the sun god. It is situated on the seashore, 19 miles north of Jagannath Puri. It was constructed of black stone in the beginning of the 13th century of the Shaka era, and it shows expert craftsmanship and architecture. Actually, you all know this. The Konarka is a very famous place. The cultural types, they like to go there and snap photos because the architecture is very beautiful. The entire temple is constructed like a chariot of the sun god. And the more gross among the materialists, they know this Konarka temple for the erotic carvings on the sides of the temple. Sometimes we see these things. So anyway, the point here is that this temple is about 20 miles away from Puri, where Lord Chaitanya ran into the ocean. All night he floats in the ocean, and who knows what kind of madness of love. And in the morning, he ends up in Konarka, 20 miles away. So let's hear what happens next. Jamunate jalakeli gopi gana sange, Krishna karen Mahaprabhu agna range. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fully merged in the pastimes Lord Krishna performed with the gopis in the waters of the Yamuna. Jhan Sharupadi gana Prabhu na dekhiya, Kaha gela Prabhu, kahe chamakita haiya. Meanwhile, All the devotees headed by Swarup Damodar lost sight of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, astonished. They began searching for him, asking, where's the Lord God? Manovege gela Prabhu dekhiti narila, Prabhu re na dekhiya shamshai parite lagila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had run off at the speed of the mind. No one could see him. Thus, everyone was puzzled as to his whereabouts. Speed of the mind, think about it. You can think about Mayapur, and you're automatically transported thousands of miles in less than a second. At this speed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ran into the ocean, and nobody saw. Where did he go? So they were all anxious. Jagannatha dekhite ke baad devalay gela, anya dhyane ke baad made padila. Has the Lord gone to the temple of Jagannath? Or has he fallen down in madness in some garden? Nicha mandire gela ke ba narendre, Chataka Parvate gela ke ba konar kere. Perhaps he went to the Gundicha temple, or to Lake Narendra, or to the Chatak Parvat. Maybe he went to the temple at Karnataka. Eta balish habe fire prabhure chahiya, samudre ratira aila kata janalaya. Talking like this, the devotees wandered here and there looking for the Lord. Isn't that the perfection of life? To be talking in anxiety about the Lord or his service, and to be looking for him at every step. This was the experience of those devotees on that Sharat Purnima, so many hundreds of years ago. Finally, they came to the shore, accompanied by many others. Chahiye beraite aiche ratri shesha hailo, antarthana haila prabhu nischai karilo. Oh my God. While they were searching for the Lord, the night ended, and thus they all decided, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has now disappeared. Prabhura vichhede kara dehi nahi prana, anishta shanka binakara mani nahi an. In separation from the Lord, everyone felt as though he had lost his very life. The devotees concluded that there must have been some mishap. They could not think of anything else. Anishta shankini bandhu hridayani bhavantihi. This is a quotation from Abhignana Shakuntala. It's a drama. A relative or intimate friend is always fearful of some injury to his beloved. Anishta shankini bandhu hridayani bhavantihi. Then, Samudrera tirayashi jogati karila chirayu parvata dike kata jana gela. When they arrived at the seashore, they conferred amongst themselves. Then some of them sought out Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Chatak Parvat. So it seems as if they had not completely given up hope. Some were still looking. Purva dishai chale sharup laya karta jan, Sindhu dire nire karen prabhurandeshan. Swarup Damodar proceeded east with others, looking for the Lord on the beach or in the water. Because if you're in Puri and you're going east, there's only one place you're going to get, and that is the water. So they went into the water, here it says. They were looking in the water. Vishadi vihwala shabe nahi kachetan tabhu preme bhule kari prabhurandeshan. Everyone was overwhelmed with moroseness and almost unconscious, but out of ecstatic love, they continued to wander here and there, searching for the Lord. Dekhene ka jaliya aise kanthe jala pari, hase kande nache gaye boli hari hari. Here's a hint. Passing along the beach, they saw a fisherman approaching with his net over his shoulder. Laughing, crying, dancing, and singing, he kept repeating the name, Hari, Hari. Jaliyar cheshta dekhi shabar chamatkar, Sharup Gosai tare puchen samachar. Seeing the activities of the fishermen, everyone was astonished. We don't see fishermen chanting Hare Krishna in madness every day. It doesn't happen. But nothing in the Leelas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is ordinary. So Swarup Damodar Goswami therefore asked him for information. Kaha jaliya ek dige, dekhailo ek jon, tomare doshake ne kahata karon. My dear fisherman, he said, why are you behaving like this? Have you seen someone hereabouts? What is the cause of your behavior? Please tell us. Jaliya kahe yahan ek manushya na dekhilo, jalavahite ek amritak mora jalayaila. The fisherman replied, I've not seen a single person here, but while casting my net in the water, I captured a dead body. Baramachavali, Ami, Utayamo Jatane, Mritagate Kite Mora, Bhai Hailamane. I lifted it with great care, thinking it a big fish, but as soon as I saw that it was a corpse, great fear arose in my mind. Jala Kashaite Taranga Sparsha Hilo, Sparsha Matre Shei Bhuta Hridaye Pashilo. As I tried to release the net, I touched the body. And as soon as I touched it, a ghost entered my heart. Bhai kampa hailo moranektre vahijal, gadgalavani roma uthailo shakal. I shivered in fear and shed tears. My voice faltered and all the hairs on my body stood up. Kiba brahmadaitya kiba bhuta kahinanda jai. Darshanamatre manushera paishik cheikai. I don't know whether the corpse I found was the ghost of a dead Brahmin or an ordinary man, but as soon as one looks upon it, the ghost enters his body. Shari dikhalatara hata panchashata ekaika hashtapadatara teen hata. This body of this ghost is very long, 5 to 7 cubits. Each of its arms and legs is as much as 3 cubits long. Asti sandhi chutile charma kare nadabare taha dekhi pranakara nahi rahe rahe. Its joints are all separated beneath the skin, which is completely slack. No one could see it and remain alive in his body. Madarupadhari rahe uttananayan, kabhu gongong kare kabhu rahe chetan. That ghost has taken the form of a corpse, but he keeps his eyes open. Sometimes he utters the sound gong gong, and sometimes he remains unconscious. Sakshat dekhichom more paila shei bhut, vimaile more kaiche jive stri put. I have seen that ghost directly, and he is haunting me. But if I die, who will take care of my wife and children? This ghost is certainly very difficult to talk about, but I'm going to find an exorcist and ask him if he can release me from it. Ekaratriye bule macha kalile mariye nirjane bhuta preta amarna lage nrasingha smarane. I wander alone at night, killing fish in solitary places, but because I remember the hymn to Lord Nrasingha, ghosts do not touch me. E bhuta Nrasingha name chapai dvigune tahara akara dekhite bhai lage mane. This ghost, however, overcomes me with redoubled strength when I chant the Nrasingha mantra. When I even see the form of this ghost, great fear arises in my mind. O thana jaiha, ami nishedhi tomare, taha gele shei bhuta lagi bas shavare. Do not go there. I forbid you. If you go, that ghost will catch you all. This is the fisherman warning Swarup Damodar Goswami. Eta shuni Swarup Goswami Shavatatva Jani Jaliare Kichukai Shumaduravani. In very sweet speech, Swarup Damodar could understand the full truth of the matter. He spoke sweetly to the fisherman. Ami bado jha jani bhuta chadaite mantra padi shri hasta dila tahan mathate. I'm a famous exorcist, he said, and I know how to rid you of this ghost. He then chanted some mantras and placed his hand on the top of the fisherman's head. Teen chaparad mari kahe bhuta palailo bhai na pai ho bali sustira korilo. He slapped the fisherman 3 times and said, now the ghost has gone away. Do not be afraid. By saying this, he pacified the fisherman. Because everyone knows, if you're trying to preach to someone, first they have to be a little peaceful. This is why Srila Prabhupada, especially in the last years of his instructions, personal instructions, he was increasingly, urgently, and repeatedly and very clearly directing so many instructions to the initiated membership of ISKCON about Varnashram Dharma, which he called the remaining 50% of his mission. In fact, one scholar did a statistical analysis, and he calculated that Srila Prabhupada gave 80% of his instructions on this topic in the last 3 years that he was with us. Why? Because he could see the modern and especially Western lifestyle is so frenetic and so materialistic and so, I mean to say, increasingly chaotic and godless, that there's virtually no chance to sit down peacefully and hear what Krishna says, or simply hear the Hare Krishna mantra. It's very difficult. A person has to be peaceful. And Swarup Damodar Goswami, being not only a learned gentleman, but Parama Bhagavata as well, great devotee, he knew this. Krishna says in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, text 32, that a person who has empathy is the one that he considers to be the best of all yogis. We have to recognize the challenges and the weaknesses and the strengths of our audience. And so naturally, someone of the caliber of Swarup Damodar Goswami was so expert, he could immediately understand what was needful. And he did that here for this fisherman, not poor fisherman, very, very fortunate fisherman, but ignorant fisherman. The fisherman was affected by ecstatic love, but he was also fearful. He had thus become doubly agitated. Now that his fear had subsided, however, he had become somewhat normal. Just like devotees, we see practically devotees they're very much affected by Krishna consciousness. It makes a deep impact on their lives, but they still remain affected by the mundane things as well. It is possible. This verse shows that it is possible. Something to think about. Sharup ko he jana tumi kara bhuta gyan, bhuta na he teho Krishna Chaitanya Bhagavan. Swarup Damodar Goswami said to the fisherman, my dear sir, the person you are thinking is a ghost is not actually a ghost, but it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prema vesha padila teho samudrera jale, tada tumi uthaila apanara jale. Jale, sorry. Because of ecstatic love, the Lord fell into the sea, but you've caught him in your net and rescued him. Tanasparashe hailo tomar Krishna premodoy, bhuta preta jnane tomar haila mahabhay. Simply touching him has awakened your dormant love of Krishna, but because you thought him a ghost, you were very much afraid of him. Sometimes we think Krishna consciousness is something other than what it is. Sometimes. Ebe hoy gela, tomar mano hoilo sthire, kahan tare uthaiya cha, dekha amare. Now that your fear has gone and your mind is peaceful, please show me where he is. Jaliya kahe prabhu dekhya chon bar bar. The fisherman replied, I've seen the Lord many times, but this is not he. This body is very much deformed. Sharup kohe tana hoy premer vikar, asti santhe chade hoy ati dirghakar. Swarup Damodar Goswami said, the Lord's body becomes transformed in his love for God. Sometimes the joints of his bones separate and his body becomes very much elongated. Shuni she jaliya anandata hoilo, shavalanya gela mahaprabhure dekhailo. Hearing this, the fisherman became very happy. He brought all the devotees with him and showed them Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gauranga. So this is a description that we find, particularly in the Lord's Antya Lila, in his Puri Lila. Sometimes his arms became very long, 6-9 feet long, and the bones would separate and just be hanging by flesh. Who can understand this? Where is there any example in history of this happening to anyone, anywhere? We do not see this. They are unique pastimes. And remember, the purpose of the Lord here is to demonstrate to us the intensity of love of Godhead, that it can do such things to a human body. One of my godbrothers, Guru Das Prabhu, he wrote many years ago, he wrote a Vyas Puja offering to Srila Prabhupada, and in which he very eloquently said, devotional service renders physical laws elastic. Very nicely put. And here we're seeing an example of that. Not only here, as I mentioned, in many places, particularly in the Lord's Puri Lila, we see that the Lord is demonstrating, he is exhibiting these physical manifestations of intense premonmada, madness in love of Godhead, with astonishing physical manifestations like this. So hearing this, the fisherman became very happy. He brought all the devotees with him and showed them Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Bhumite padiyache prabhu dirgha shabakoi, jale shveta tanu balu lagiyache gai. The Lord was lying on the ground, his body elongated and bleached white by the water. He was covered from head to foot with sand. Very hard to imagine this. Ati dirgha shithila tanu jarmanat pai, dura patha uthaya ghare anana jai. The Lord's body was stretched and his skin was slack and hanging loose. To lift him and take him the long distance home would have been impossible. Ardra kaupin dura kari shushka paraya, bahirvashe shoyaila baluka charayana. The devotees removed his wet undergarment and replaced it with a dry one. Then, laying the Lord on an outer cloth, they cleaned the sand from his body. Shave medi uchakari karin sankirtane, uchakari Krishna nama pahin prabhukane. Oh, I just noticed the time. Anyway, they all performed sankirtan, loudly chanting the holy name of Krishna into the Lord's ear. Katha khane prabhur kane shabda parashilo, hunkara kariya prabhu tabahi uthilo. After some time, the sound of the holy name entered the ear of the Lord, who immediately got up, making a great noise. Uthite ashti shaba lagilo nijasthane, Ardhabahye iti uti karindarashane. As soon as he got up, his bones assumed their proper places. With half external consciousness, the Lord looked here and there. Tinadashai Mahaprabhura hin Sharvakal Antardasha Bahya Dasha Ardhabahya Ar. The Lord remained in one of three different states of consciousness at all times: internal, external, and half external. Antardashar kichu ghor, kichu bahya gyan, shei dasha kahe bhakta ar bahya lam. When the Lord was deeply absorbed in internal consciousness, but he nevertheless exhibited some external consciousness, devotees called his condition ardhabahya, or half external consciousness. Ardhabahye kahen prabhu pralapa vachane, akashe kahen prabhu shunena bhakta gane. In his half external consciousness, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talked like a madman. The devotees could distinctly hear him speaking to the sky. Kalindi dekhyami gena vrindavan, dekhi jal krida karen brajendra nandan. Seeing the river Yamuna, he said, I went to Vrindavan. There I saw the son of Nanda Maharaj performing his sporting pastimes in the water. Radhikadi gopi gana shange katrameli, jamunara jale maharange karen keli. Lord Krishna was in the water of the Yamuna with the company of the gopis headed by Srimati Radharani. They were performing pastimes in a great sporting manner. Tirerahi dekhyami shaki gana shange. Eka shaki shaki gane dekhai sherange. I saw this pastime as I stood on the bank of the Yamuna in the company of the gopis. One gopi was showing me some other gopis. One gopi was showing some other gopis the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in the water. Partavastra anankare shanarpiya shaki kore shukshma shukla vashta paridhan. Krishna Naya Kantagan Kaila Jalavaghan Jalakedi Rachila Sudhan. All the gopis entrusted their silken garments and ornaments to the care of their friends and then put on fine white cloth. Lord Krishna, taking his beloved gopis with him, bathed and performed very nice pastimes in the water of the Yamuna. Okay, so I think we're out of time now. We're not done yet. I'm sure we all want to go on. What happened next? You have to tell me then what to do. It's hard to pull out of the water like this, right?
Yes, it was wonderful, magnificent pastimes. Thank you so much. So,
yeah, I also have another program to do after this one, so I have to go too. But if
we can do part
maybe if there's any questions or any discussion, we could just take a few minutes, maybe for one question if anybody has.
Sure.
Otherwise, I think it's time to adjourn.
Devotees, anyone has questions? Looks like everybody is drowned in the ocean.
That's the complete intention of Srila Prabhupada. He's written his books in such a way that this is the natural effect. Just like the fishermen who touch the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even if we just touch one drop of the ocean of this chapter, the nectarian ocean of this chapter's pastime, we will become mad like that fisherman as well. Very hard to give this up, but I think it's time to stop now. So if there are no questions, then.
Thank you. Thank you, bro.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, bro. Quick announcement. The evening Sunday feast is on. Also celebrating the Gaura Purnima again today with the drama, special drama by Harikishore Prabhu and Party. So please join us 5:30, starting with Tulsi Arti, Prabhupada Arti, and Sandhya Arti at 6 o'clock. then class and drama. So please join us today evening. The next upcoming festival is on April 10th. Ram Navami is coming up, which is on Sunday, April 10th. We'll let you know how we'll be celebrating. But since it is Sunday, most likely it will be 5 to 9 p.m. or so. There is April 10th Sunday. And then next, I think Monday is Ekadasi, 28th Monday. Special Ekadasi, as far as I know, I think it's a Mahatripsara Ekadasi. I think 2 or 3 Tidis coming on the same day, which is even more auspicious than the regular Ekadasi. That is Papa Mochana Ekadasi, 28th March, Monday. Govindas is on. So, like to avail and to add to the Govindas WhatsApp group, please let us know. We can add you in the WhatsApp group. And next Friday, 25th March, is Srivas Pandit's appearance day. As we are discussing, we just heard beautiful pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are 3 places where this esoteric pastimes happened of Ras Leela. Lord Krishna performed, which is in Vrindavan. Another place is Srivas Thakur's place, Srivas Angan. Confidentially, nobody was allowed to enter into the Srivas house, at least initial days. So that is the same, considered as same place as Rasasthali, Srivas Angan. So Srivas Thakur is the extraordinary devotee of Narada Muni appearing in the Leela of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By his mercy, we will be able to understand a little glimpse of devotion, service, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy and Nityananda Prabhu's mercy. So Friday is a very, very important day, actually, Srivas Thakur's appearance day. So those are the Govinda's website is there. That is govindasnj.com. 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 Please place your orders there. So we'll be able to get the Govindas Mahaprasad. Thank you. If no one has any questions, Madhur, anything else?
No.
I think today we have a book distribution or something at Hillsborough, 12 to 2 or something. Let me see. 1 minute. 12 to, 11 to 2. March 20th, Hillsborough, Route 206, Patidar, I think, Bhavani or Patidar in that store at 206, Hillsborough, 11 to 2 p.m. If you are available, please join. So we'll conclude the session if there are no questions, no other announcements. Thank you all for joining. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripasindubhyavcha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Vishnu ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai.